Hey guys! So we are in the middle of learning about what it means to live the good life. So last week we studied the book of Proverbs, where we went through all of these very wise sayings and how they could improve upon your life. And then this week we're going to get probably quite the opposite of that from the book of Ecclesiastes, which has a very different message. Stick through it till the end though. I think it's going to enlighten you.
We're exploring 3 books in the Bible known as the wisdom literature: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and Job. And they're all asking the question, what does it mean to live well in this world?
So we've looked at Proverbs, who you could think of as a bright young teacher.
She's all about pursuing wisdom, an attribute of God that's woven into reality. And she's optimistic that if you use wisdom, you will build a successful life.
But then we come to Ecclesiastes, who's more like this sharp, middle-aged critic. And he says,
"You think using wisdom will bring you success. You'd better think again, because life here under the sun is meaningless."
And that's a phrase he uses a lot in this book.
But to understand this book, we have to realize first that we're hearing 2 voices.
So first there's the teacher, and we've been calling him the critic. He's the main voice in the book.
But he is introduced to us by another figure, the author. And he's the one who's collected the critic's words, and then at the end of the book summarizes everything and gets the final word.
So why does the author want us to hear from the critic?
Well, he wants to turn your view of the world upside down, and he's going to let the critic explore 3 really disturbing things about the world.
And we should warn you, these are pretty intense.
Yeah, so the first is the march of time, or as the critic says,
Generations come and generations go, but the earth, it's been here long before us and will be long after. No one remembers people from long ago, and all the people yet to come, they too will be forgotten by those who come after them.
So on a cosmic scale, you and I, we are just a blip. Stars are born, and then they die and form planets which orbit new stars, and those planets, they change over time and eventually burn up.
And amidst this cosmic backdrop, my entire existence is like a blink in time.
Which leads to the critic's second disturbing observation, that we are all going to die.
Humans face the same fate as the animals: death. All people, the righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, those who offer sacrifices to God and those who do not, they all share the same destiny. All this activity and madness, then we all join the dead.
Man, this book is depressing.
And so is the final disturbing thing for the critic, and that is life's random nature.
So in Proverbs, life isn't random. There's a clear cause and effect relationship between doing the right thing and being rewarded.
But the fact is that life doesn't always work that way. The critic has observed a glitch in the system. He calls it chance, or in his words,
The race doesn't always go to the swift, or the battle to the strong, nor does food always come to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the educated. Time and chance happen to them all.
So his point is that you can't really control anything in life. It's just way too unpredictable.
So if I want to master life,
Then you're setting yourself up for a fall. Now, throughout the book, the critic uses a metaphor to tie together all of these disturbing ideas. Nearly 40 times he says that everything in life is hevel. It's a Hebrew word that means smoke or vapor. Like smoke, life is beautiful and mysterious.
it takes one shape, and before you know it, it takes a new shape.
And smoke looks solid, but try and grab it, it'll slip right through your fingers.
And when you're stuck in the thick of it, like fog, it's impossible to see clearly.
Now, our modern translations have lost the metaphor, and they usually translate hevel as meaningless. But if you read closely, the critic isn't saying that life has no meaning, but rather that its meaning is never clear. Like smoke, life is confusing, it's disorienting and uncontrollable.
So what are we supposed to do with all of this?
Well, surprisingly, the critic first of all acknowledges the perspective of Proverbs. He says it's a really good idea to learn wisdom and to live in the fear of the Lord.
Really? I mean, he just said that doesn't guarantee success.
But he knows it's the right thing to do. But secondly, and more often, he says that since you can't control your life, you should stop trying. Learn to hold things with an open hand because you really only have control over one thing, and that's your attitude towards the present moment. Stop worrying, he says, and choose to enjoy a good conversation with a friend, or the sun on your face, or a good meal with people that you care about.
The simple things in life.
Yes, and both the good things and the bad, because both are rich gifts from God. And that's the surprising wisdom of Ecclesiastes.
Listening to the critic is painful and can lead you into some dark places.
And that's why the author speaks up at the end of the book. He doesn't want you to lose hope. He wants to make you humble into someone who trusts that life has meaning even when you can't make sense of it, that one day God will clear the hevel and bring his justice on all that we've done. And so he tells us that the proper response to all of this is to fear the Lord and keep his commandments.
And that's the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, there's one more voice in the Bible's wisdom literature, and that's the book of Job.
And he will bring us the final, much-needed perspective on our journey into wisdom.
Okay, so how do you feel? I think there's a lot of stuff in there that we can learn from, right? So there's three messages that the book of Ecclesiastes kind of rolls through that the skeptic, he points out, right? That there's this march of time that's inevitable, and we're just this blip on the radar. In the whole history of time, universes spinning around, the earth aging, rivers flowing, and we're just this tiny blip on that radar. The next one was that we're all going to die. We're just like the animals. We're going to die. We all do all of these things. We all try our best. We run around, and all of this activity and all of this madness still ends in death. It's pretty rough stuff. And then the last one, to me, is the toughest, and it's that life is completely random. We think that the things that we do are going to control life, but we know that bad things happen to good people. We know that good things happen to bad people. We can look at the smartest people in the world and they make stupid mistakes. The smartest people in the world can plan for everything and the worst things can still happen to them. The healthiest people in the world could be driving down 99 and die in a car accident. Life is random. We cannot control any of it. So these 3 points kind of leave us in this sense of discomfort where we're going, what's the point of anything? A lot of people call this, it's a term called nihilism, where what's the point of life? There is no point, right? And so the author of the book, he kind of rolls back around and gives you some insight. But before we get to that, I want to talk about a phrase that gets used over and over, and you guys heard this in the video, and it's this term hevel, right? And so in the Bible, most of the modern translations translate this word hevel into meaningless or vanity. But what it really meant in Hebrew was this idea of smoke, right? Life is like smoke because you can't grab onto it. And if you're in the middle of it, you don't really know what is what. It's this formless thing that kind of blocks your understanding of life. And so he's not saying life is meaningless. He's saying that the meaning of life is impossible for us to discern while we're in it. It's impossible if you're in a room, right? In a building that's on fire and the room is full of smoke, it's pretty hard to tell where that smoke is coming from. It's pretty hard to find the point of the fire when you're in the middle of the house, choking on the smoke. And that's the point that this author is telling us, is that life is hard to discern in the middle of it. It's hard to discern the meaning of this stuff while we're in the midst of it. It's hard to discern the meaning of this virus. Like, why does this virus exist? Why do bad things happen all the time? Why is this happening? It's hard to figure that out, right? And that's what this book is about, is that it's not saying life is meaningless. It's saying that the meaning of life is impossible to discern for us. So the response to that could be this like incredible depression. If we can't figure out life, then what's the point? But the author of the book, kind of pushes back and leans in this other direction. It says, stop trying to control your life and instead live it. Sit back and absorb those great moments, absorb that sunlight, absorb the river as it comes down through through the land. Absorb life as it's happening to you, all of the good things and all of the bad things. We should enjoy every moment because God is giving us this life, and it's incredible, right? And one day at the end, God will completely clear the hevel, and we'll be able to see exactly what's going on and understand that meaning. But until then, we need to trust God. Let's pray together. Dear God, thank you so much for this book of Ecclesiastes, which upon first reading comes across as this incredibly depressing book that feels like it's being weighted down upon us and feels like it's tearing apart everything that we tend to hold dear. But God, that is not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is this lifting up and helping us to understand that life is not meaningless. Life has meaning. We just struggle to understand it. And in that struggling to understand it, we need to learn to rely on you and rely on the love that you give us. God, help us to live moment to moment in our lives. Help us to live for you so that we can have that meaning. We love you. Amen.
In my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failure, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, oh, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. My lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore. I won't fear what tomorrow brings. With each morning I'll rise and sing. My God's love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. You are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. My lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore, safe to shore. Far before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. Far before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. Far before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. Far before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storm. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. My lighthouse,